You can almost imagine it, try to imagine it, but then it feels like you're making things up to yourself. So this is a topic I have a lot of difficulty, let's say, practically seeing in my life. So inshallah, together we will try to understand that. I guess we can start from the first paragraph, and even the paragraph before that, because I think that's a good paragraph to connect it with. So the veils have windows which look to one another, and the names appear one within the other, and the acts look to one another, and the similitudes enter one within the other, and the titles hint of one another, and the manifestations resemble each other, and the disposals assist and complete one another, and the various dispositions of dominicality help and assist one another. So he's talking about the different names. It surely therefore necessitates not denying the other titles, acts, and degrees of dominicality when Almighty God is known through one of his names, titles, or degrees of dominicality. Indeed, it is harmful if a transition is not made from the manifestation of any one name to the others. For example, if the works of the names of all-powerful and creator are seen, and not the name of all-knowing, a person may fall into heedlessness and the misguidance of nature. He should always keep in view and recite He, and He is God. He should listen and hear from everything. Say, He is God, the One. His tongue should utter and proclaim. All the world declares there is no God but He. Thus, through the decree of God, there is no God but He. These are the most beautiful names. The Quran points to these truths we have mentioned. And then, as Yusuf read, he goes on to start reading, like for example, he reads the quaking earth or the stormy sea. You will hear that they're saying, "O glorious one, O one of might, all compelling." I guess we can take these examples one by one. First, the first example, if you want to observe these elevated truths from close to, go and ask a stormy sea or the quaking earth, what are you saying? You will hear that they are saying, "O glorious one, O one of might, all compelling." So let's just start from this example. Imagine an earthquake or a stormy sea. I'd like to ask you guys how you are hearing this, or how you do hear these names, how you can understand how Nursi came to these conclusions, if you have any initial thoughts. Brother Osman is smiling. You want to say something?
Can we start with the feeling in the middle of a stormy sea? Well, what do we feel? I think I would feel like weak, and also all these large waves, etc. I would feel like impressed or great grandeur, something like I would probably feel the full force of that event that in which I see my family.
Wouldn't you be terrified? Or
terrified, thank you. That's a good word.
Too scared to hear anything?
No, actually, I think the terrified, that feeling itself is I was going to suggest that's something to do with the names that are discussed here. Not in addition to that. Just stay in that moment of getting terrified and see where that feeling takes us. Just a humble attempt to start reflection.
So thinking myself, because no one wants to help.
So I have no one?
You help. You're someone. You're not no one.
No one other than yourself.
If I was in the middle, I guess I have been in an earthquake once. It was very small though. I'm sure some of you have probably.
It wasn't a terrifying earthquake.
It wasn't a terrifying one, right? I fell asleep when I woke up. So.
I was in a big one, so go ahead with the earthquake example.
Okay, if you're a big one, then you should have an idea.
Oh, absolutely.
So you want to talk about the
talk about your experiences.
Well, at first, God is nowhere to be found, because at least that's not how I felt. I didn't even remember him. And then when you realize that actually it is something that it is his doing, then you truly experience your how insignificant you are. And so through that, like you understand, like, and also the experience, the how you say, the fear or the dehşet,
Terror.
the terror or the experience also kind of shows you how mighty he is and how powerful he is. Let's put it this way, like I have never seen, maybe because I don't go to like morning praise in the mosque as well, but like I have never seen mosque like being that full in that morning, like compared to the other days. Like so it's like I guess that tells you something. So like I guess you understand your impotence in front of an event that is completely out of your control, that brings you to your like true recognition who is really in charge. Of course that feeling doesn't last that long, but that is the experience.
So here it says you will hear that they are saying, "Oh glorious one, oh glorious one." But I guess maybe the way we're interpreting this is you hearing it means that that's the meaning you get out of it. That's what it incites in you, like the emotion. Because you don't, that earthquake makes you feel that. So you don't actually hear it, or obviously you don't hear it, but it's something still within you that is just an emotion that comes within you, like a thought, an idea.
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't know how you can do it, like, you are emotionally connected of the every situation and event, right? But like, maybe we should refer back to the verse, like when we were discussing the verse itself, like how the verse starts with God, there is no God but He, and then His are the most beautiful names. So like what I understand from the example, that this like teaching of this verse should be like put in practice in every event or every experience. So like through like whatever the experience is, I should be able to have the consciousness of saying that, okay, like this specific quality that I experience right now must be like his or coming from him. So that's what, at least what I understand, that's what Musi is suggesting. But like when it comes to like practical experience, whether I am able to really be conscious of it or like put it in practice at the time of the experience or not, the answer is no.
I was just thinking, just to bring it even closer to home, even if I haven't experienced a physical earthquake, there are personally tons of times in my life where I feel an earthquake going on, right? There's instability. I can't keep things secure. There's shaking. I feel like I'm being pulled from one direction to another direction. These may be due to expectations or events that I just feel I have no control over. So I think, you know, we can ask ourselves, or I can ask myself, what are the moments in my life where my earth, my world, is quaking, is shaking, and I can't find any point of reference or stability within the event itself to hold on to. That forces me to question why I'm experiencing that in the first place.
There's this aspect of, it says, go and ask from it. Then you will hear those answers from either the mountains, whatever. The very first verse that we were studying is saying, right after the first verse, I guess this part was not taken in the translation. And this was the reason, actually. So, God, there is no God but He. His are the most beautiful names. And تَدْعُوهُ بِهَا, ask with those. So, from Him, ask using those names. And previously we were studying 23rd word, which concluded with supplication. So sort of this 24th word is going to be, how am I going to have a communication with my Creator? How am I going to feel the presence or be in the presence so that I'm not going to be alien or distant? So I guess this was the where the 24th word is sitting. Then, okay, I'm going to ask with his names, but what are his names? So Nursi is, I guess, inviting us to first see that everything is asking from him with his names. So first, train yourself, and if you would like to truly know this, go and ask to the existence, and you will realize that they are actually asking from their creator through those names, as much as I pay attention. So this part is important, I guess. What I should be, first of all, am I in need of understanding such a message from close? This is why he says, if you would like to understand it from close, go and ask from them. But today in Juma, there was a verse, so this reminded me of that verse. So Khatib was talking about they have ears, but they don't listen. They have eyes, but they don't see. They have intellect, but they do not think. So they are like cattle, or even more adult, lost path. I don't know what a better word for adult. So in here, gone astray. So in here it is talking about me going and asking, then I'm going to listen and hear what they are saying. So what is it that, how shall I locate myself so that when I ask to a river, to a sea, or to the earth, then I will be able to listen and hear their voice. How is that possible, I guess? And in the other verse, why does the Creator says they are like cattle? So I want to be a human, I don't want to be a cattle. So what makes me a human but not a cattle? Where does the difference come into picture? So it's just a bunch of questions, nothing definitive. But I don't know why. What makes a cattle cattle, or what makes a human cattle, and what makes a human human?
It looks like this person knows how to question a sea or an earthquake or an animal, right? Goes and asks them, and they respond. So he seems to have this ability to do this.
So can it be that this person is expecting to get an answer from them? If I do not expect to get an answer from a wall, as we have sayings in Turkish, just talking to the wall, which means you never expect a response from a wall. So this is how it feels to talk to a wall, right? So do I take a seed as a wall, something that will, like the example of baby Jesus, actually he also talked about Jesus in there. So they say, is this baby going to talk to us?
Yeah.
So are you mocking us? But when they ask, baby starts talking to them. So am I expecting a response from the sea, or just a sea is a meaningless thing out there? How can it talk? So only conscious intellectual beings talk. So what sort of a message am I expected to get out of sea or an earthquake? It is just by chance, or it's natural, as if I am putting my words on the tongue of a sea. It sounds like sea do not speak, trees do not speak. I'm just putting my own words to their mouth. It might feel like.
So you're just,
Go ahead.
no, I'm just trying to fill the time. You go ahead.
So when you say like the person knows how to ask questions, or that was the comment?
And the person knows how to question the sea, the earthquake, and can understand their response, supposing that they respond.
So yeah, just a small addition to that. Like on top of that, actually, like that person, happen to be, I guess, nursing, it speaks to the language, right? Can communicate.
Mm-hmm.
So it is like almost like a two-way communication with the creation.
The thing is, I don't think it is though, because what he does.
Or at least, like what I understand is like that's what he's usually suggesting. That like that's how it's supposed to be.
but then it becomes practically impossible. At least for me, I don't see how you can ever implement that. However, if you go to a tree and start questioning it, start trying to read it a bit, and then you can start seeing the tree is using your own words on the tree, and you can say the tree is maybe speaking, because now it's speaking some words that you put onto it that makes sense. I think this is how it is.
Last week, actually, you referred to the verse yourself. Like, if it is practically impossible, why do you think that the first verse of this, like the Revelation, starts with read? And then you actually explain like how you are supposed to read, right? Like with the name of Creator, remember?
Right.
Okay.
So I think like actually whatever is being discussed here also has a relevance to that verse as well.
Right.
Right. I think what I'm trying to say is you need to read. You can't listen. Like, if I sit next to a tree and just listen and don't actually try to read, what am I saying? If you just like sit there enjoying nature, just the peacefulness, and you're just mindlessly sitting there, you won't hear it. I don't think so. You need to actually put in the effort to reflect on it and try to see or try to read it. What does this mean? Why is it here? What does its existence stand for? And then as you put these words onto the tree, the tree will start speaking for you, like the words that you gave it. But
yeah, okay.
It's not just listening. That's what I thought. Go ahead.
Sorry.
I'm done.
Are we putting words on the tree? Or I didn't understand.
So when I read a tree, and I see that the tree doesn't exist by itself, I see that the tree, like by putting words to it, I see that it speaks of one that is keeping it alive, that's giving it water. I see that it speaks of one that, like, gives it sunlight and sustenance.
Right.
So this is me putting words onto the tree.
Or this is me saying that this is speech. And let me treat it as speech.
Yes. I mean, that's what I'm trying to say.
Okay. So what I understood is that when I ask to the tree, what do you say? I thought of it as, some people have reading glasses, right? So I may have a book in front of me and I may treat it as a support for the vase, right? I may not treat it as a book, but a support for the vase, right? But when I put my reading glasses on and get in front of it, I now treat it as a book. That's the same way as in this piece, asking, what do you say? Right? Now I'm ready to understand what you're telling me.
Okay, so you need to put on a certain reading glass to be able to.
So it's like changing the way you look at existence. It's the same thing as asking what do you say. Because previously I was not interested in hearing what you're telling me if my receptors were not on.
Yeah. That makes sense to me. So I guess we can continue to the next examples unless someone would like to make a comment. Yes, please go ahead.
So it's like a general comment. Author starts with stormy sea, and then quaking earth, shaking earth. As Sister Ayşenur mentioned, I guess this is very relevant, at least in my case. Sometimes, what to say sometimes, but it's almost most of the time, your life is like a stormy sea and shaking earth. Everything is, disturbing you. And then he concludes with the humans. If you look, then ask a human being who is a true human. We can discuss what it means. Even if it's just look at the human part. He recites all the most beautiful names. So again, my life is full of human beings. And most of the time, this is the reason it seems so yes, stormy and shaking. Like there are all these different people, all these different ideologies, almost as if attacking me constantly. I don't know. Maybe it's about the way I live my life. Whenever I look, I see someone who's opposing something I believe, who's attacking something. I think, at least from my perspective, like nowadays maybe I'm taking living life too defensive. And to me, initially at least, like it doesn't seem like they're trying to tell me anything. They're just destroying me. They don't want me. We don't like you. Just go away. So this is the life I see. It's not like they talking to me. They explaining something. And then he says, it is as if the universe is a huge orchestra celebrating the divine names, mixing the faintest song with the most powerful refrains. It produces a sublime and subtle harmony. Again, to me, like, it's almost the opposite. Like everything is so chaotic. I don't know why it's happening this way. I don't know why friends at the workplace act this way, other friends act another different ways. All these arguments, all these miscommunications, whatever. No harmony at all. Sometimes I feel that way. Something is missing, something, I don't know, I cannot make sense. And then at the beginning he says, Yusuf was talking about this, go and ask. Yeah, sometimes I ask, for instance, as my work, I look at data and I ask what it means. I try to make sense of the data. Or I look at some, I don't know, behavior of people and I try to make sense in the context of my work. But here he says something else. He asks for, what are you saying? It's almost like assuming that, maybe not assuming, but I don't know what is the right word, but looking at the things, looking at the people, and acknowledging that they will tell me something. They will take me as an addressee. They will value me. They will, acknowledge my presence and tell me something. And I guess this is the game changer, like, because instead of being stressed, instead of being, receiving these messages telling you, oh, go away, we don't like you, we don't want you. This is the opposite. Like, what are you saying? What are you trying to tell me? You are there to tell me something, and I'm listening. So I guess, like going back to your original question, like how you listen, how you hear all this, I guess it all starts with first locating yourself, that you are someone who deserves to receive some meaningful messages, to receive, to be spoken. You locate yourself in the universe, that all these people, they're not attacking you. They're there so that you will understand something, so that you will listen, you will hear something. They are there to serve you, to tell you something. And I guess it starts with locating yourself. I don't know if the word is right choice, but having a dignity in life. That I am someone, and all this creation around me will speak to me. They will not just, articulate some words to open air. No, they will speak to me. I will listen to them and I will understand something. Rather than, just being a dot moving randomly around some other randomly moving objects in a chaotic sense. No, you fix yourself. You look around as a human, dignified human being, ready to listen and hear, and then they will speak to you.
So some example comes to my mind. When I look at the stars, for example, because historically this was the case, people were looking at the stars and trying to predict the future. So they were as if asking the stars what will happen tomorrow, what will happen in 10 years, whatever. And they were just, to whatever extent, as if they were getting some answers and then they were saying it. And some of them were making money out of that. So today, like in the age of science, let's say, although this used to be science at some point, today with our knowledge of astronomy and everything, whatever, so we take them to be charlatans. So the question is then, what is going to be, I guess, coming back to what Birkanabi was saying in terms of locating yourself properly to the existence. So I would like to ask questions to existence, but the answers that I get, I don't want to be a charlatan. I don't want to be just faking myself, but I want to be, because in this way or that way, I can come up with some answers. So, but I have a feeling that I want to put my feet over a solid ground. I don't want it to be just like, well, I felt like this, so be it, sort of a thing. It shouldn't be like anything goes. I would like it to be solid. So how can I get this solid sense of meaning from the existence? And I think it's a good point to say that it's very much depending on how I locate myself in this existence. But then maybe we can open up what we mean by how I locate myself in this existence and how practically it's going to work. And is there a way that I can know something is more true than the other? Meaning that predicting future from stars are not that much of a truth, really. Do I have some sort of a measure to distinguish predicting a future from stars versus, I don't know, predicting north by looking at the North Star, which is more of a solid use of stars? And what is more true than the other for the purposes of my existence, I would say. But how do I come up with some sort of a sense of feeling that this is what I would like to take? Because otherwise, I don't want to, this was discussed before, just to raise it again, I don't want to be like a schizophrenic person speaking to flowers and coming up with some either mystical or poetic outcomes, which 10 years from now, maybe I will laugh at myself, or maybe today, if I speak what I hear from a flower, maybe you're going to laugh. Maybe it was your mistake to be laughing at this, it was true, but maybe you were right and I was just stupidly speaking or stupidly claiming that I hear something from the flowers. So is there a way that I can distinguish right from wrong in terms of what I hear?
So I'm going to probably repeat the same thing and refer to the same thing. In the previous weeks, we discussed first, there is no God but God, and Birkan, actually, you said that like there is I think you used the word method, or
Method.
yeah. So it is in the first part of the verse, it is giving you a methodology, and in the second part of the verse, these are the most beautiful names. In a way, I think at least this is what I took from the discussion, that okay, first he's giving you the method of La ilaha, then he's telling you that like all the experiences that you go through, whether it is a diversity or you call it in some cases actually conflicting situations, any experience that you go through is a reflection of certain names, and those must be read in the same methodology as there is no God but He, right? And also, like referring back to like your comments last week, when you say like read in the name of the Lord who created and blah blah blah. So those are the isn't that the like when you speak about like locating yourself, here you are in the creation and you need to make sense of it. And then the revelation comes and telling you, giving you a methodology or teaching you a way how you should be reading or interacting with the beings around you. So isn't there like where it starts from in terms of like locating yourself like in relation like yourself like in the creation in relation to the rest of the beings, and also knowing or understanding how you are supposed to be interacting with the rest of the beings. And like as far as I understand, like Nursi is like opening up like that verse with like more and more examples, showing that like there is, in often cases, there is a conflicting qualities that we experience. For example, we talked about earthquake, but then we talked about the cat example that all compassionate. So how does the two go together? And he's like inviting the reader to go through every single experience with the same methodology, understanding that whatever the experience, like qualities that you are experiencing, in some cases, whether you like it or you dislike it, must be understood in the same form or in the same methodology. Then, like I guess, like creation would really like start speaking to you. Like as opposed to this, like what is the other option? Like I think there is no other way but like taking the interactions on the horizontal relationship, which is much more chaotic, and I don't know if one can get any kind of meaning out of it, especially in the human interactions, because there are egos fighting all the time.
So what I've understood so far, thank you for all the comments. I guess like the key is to be able to locate ourselves as humans. If we want to read existence, then we need to be able to locate ourselves. And something Brother Brika mentioned, which I never thought that way, but it seems to make sense, is you deserve, as a human, you deserve to be spoken to. Or let's say everything is speaking to you. It's not that sometimes I guess the sun rises, the moon sets, life goes on, and I'm just reading it. It's not that it doesn't deal with me directly. I'm just like a passenger. I'm just like watching things happening, and I'm just reading it. But actually, you're not just a passenger. You're directly interweaved into it. Like those things are directly speaking to you. Maybe that's how we're supposed to look at ourselves. Seeing that things are directly speaking to you. You're not just an ignored random person just sitting there and watching things. It's that these things are directly created for you. They mean something for you. They are speaking to you. And this is a proper form of location.
Okay, so just one question comes to my mind. So I wonder what you are thinking about this. Or maybe if you have already talked about this, you can just stop me. So everything is speaking to me is a claim or a conclusion that I reach. So, but this author right here tells me, go and ask and listen to what these say to me. So what exactly is this listening referred to? What kind of a process is that? Because if we take the example of tree, and if I go to and sit in front of a tree and ask the tree, what are you saying to me? How far do you think I can go? Thank you so much.
Someone put a tree in front of it.
Let's be more practical. Huh?
We're online participants.
Let's assume a tree. Okay,
Is this a real thing?
It's a flower.
Maybe one day it will become a tree. We should wait until then.
Probably not.
It doesn't be unless it's a tree, okay?
Actually, that might be a good example, though.
Yeah.
I mean,
It only works with tree. But
how
that's not
far?
tree.
How far do you think we can go? Just sitting in front of the tree and, looking, like waiting to hear something, or to what were the examples here? A stormy sea. So we sit in front of the stormy sea and we try to listen to it, or an earthquake. We were talking about 1999 earthquake. Yeah, I was there too. So how many times are we gonna face an earthquake? Or
One is enough. I don't want to face it.
I don't even want to face it. So I wonder if you have any thoughts about this. What kind of a process is this listening? Because it sounded to me like we are expecting something magical here, right? So I think we all agree that this is a figurative speech, so we don't expect literally the tree literally to speak to us. So it is referring to some sort of process, I think, some sort of attempt. So we should be doing something. So what is that thing? Because it seems without doing that, the tree or whatever we're looking at is not going to speak to us.
This reminds me of a old memory. I was at the senior level in the college, and I was going through some hard thing, trying to just graduate on time. With like graduation projects, everything is falling on top of each other, and I was not at a good mental state at that point. But it was like 9 p.m.-ish. Somebody knocked our door. They brought a friend of theirs, and they said that this guy started acting awkward after the exam today. So since they thought that we are good guys, we can take care of such like mad people. So anyways, they brought this almost mad guy to our house. So he came to the house, he opened up 2-3 newspapers. He had a pen. He was circling out somewhere from here, then circling something from here, putting a line in between, and just coming up with some, conspiration theories, saying that he says, today I saw a car, it was 44 something something, and see, 44 here. So like the license plate of the car, he makes a connection with the newspaper article, then 2 pages turns, and he says, okay, here, writes the name of such and such man. So definitely this guy bought some newspapers to complete some sort of a picture in his mind, but he was not asking the right questions to my sound mind from the newspaper. So he was getting some sort of answers for himself, but as outside observers, we were just trying to keep him up so that he doesn't hurt anybody else. We were just making him drink some yogurt so that he sleeps as early as possible. Because I guess the problem in this case was he was expecting something that a newspaper would never give him. So he was not asking the right question or not expecting right sort of a thing from what you would expect from a newspaper. So I guess, what am I expecting to hear from a like orchid plant? So if I am just expecting to listen how it is reproducing, for example, I'm going to get such answers from it if I put it under the microscope in the laboratory, this and that. So I'll get some sort of an answer from it. But if I'm expecting, as author in here is trying to see apparently something more than that, he says, this plant shouldn't only be like trying to reproduce, and this is the purpose of making this very beautiful colors in there. It must be something more than that. For whatever reason, he comes up with such an idea. And I guess if I take myself personally, for instance, so if I were to, I guess first, thinking about the previous chapter, 23rd word, in there he was talking about me realizing my neediness and the whole existence being needy and being provided. So if I am given, and if this flower is also given, then there is this idea of giver. So then things are now starting to change. It's not that the plant is trying to reproduce, but then this colors and the picture that's being drawn over there must be a message. And if I were doing something like this, I would say, actually, if I gave such a flower to my wife, for example, it wouldn't be for training her in terms of the reproduction system of an orchid plant. It would be a show of love, I guess.
I hope so.
So I think this, what I understand from locating myself is, do I see myself needy? Do I see plants needy? Do I see that I am being provided, it is being provided? And then what sort of feelings that I would hear, I would listen from such a plant? Then maybe I can get those as, if it's saying, oh, beauteous one, or the painter, for example, these sort of names. Or otherwise I will just come up with some conspiracy theories.
So for Yusuf, what I understand is like looking at the plant and asking some certain questions and then coming up with some answers, or let's say receiving some answers. But even before that, so when I look at the plant, I see some colors. When I look at the plant, some ideas come to my mind. So, like, I don't remember any moments of my life in which I'm blank. Like, I don't have any idea, I don't have any feeling, I don't have any, I don't know, physical interaction, like your colors, sounds. They're always there. There's always something coming to me. With flowers, when I look at it, and I'm in the, let's say, in the right mood, many things comes to me. And going at the very beginning, he says, the verse, God, there is no God but His are the most beautiful names. And also we said, as Osman was reminding, the creator, the name creator, or being aware that things are being created. So putting everything together, I'm looking at the plant, I see all these colors, and I try to see these colors in the name of the creator. So meaning, I realize that they are being created. They are not just colors of the flower, they are created colors. I have my feelings when I look at the flower. They are being created, all my feelings. So they are, in other words, they are given to me. Just like, for instance, the sound you hear in your mind is coming from outside, given to you. All these ideas are given to me. All these feelings, I look at the color, I have these feelings, it's given to me. So realizing that, using this methodology, as he was saying, La ilaha illallah, everything is being created. Like, I don't have this feeling is given to me. I don't have this idea is given to me. Everything already starts being a speech. Even if you are not that much contemplative, even if you are not trying to extract something out of it, you are already receiving all these feelings, all these ideas, all these, the physical interactions. So I guess speech is always there, listening is always there. But the difference is we don't call it as a speech, or we don't call it as a listening. Otherwise, I don't think, like, when author says listen to them, it's not something new. It's not something we don't do in regular basis. It's something we already do, but we just use the wrong name for it. We say, for instance, I feel that way. I think flower is something. rather than I listen these feelings, I listen these ideas. So at least the way I understand listening the creation or reading the creation is already there. If you are a human being, it's already there. But the way you call it is different. So to listen the creation, I'm not sure that you have to do something extra, something extraordinary. You're already doing all these connections, making all these connections. Like his friend, for instance, Yusuf's friend. I don't think he's doing something interesting or something extraordinary. He's making connections between some numbers he saw earlier and numbers he saw in a newspaper. This is something I do for a living. Like I do this and people pay me.
He's one of the crazy ones.
So I'm sure you'd make other kind of connections and people pay for it to you. So this is something so, I guess, basic in our lives. Just sometimes, if when I talk to you, for instance, you may take it as someone is speaking to you, or you may say that I'm listening voices in my head, I'm just making up some voices in my head. So I guess it's a matter of naming them, or a matter of, again, whether you start in the creative or not. I don't know if it makes sense.
Makes sense, of course.
You are the host, he is the guest, it has to make sense. You are the guest, he is the host, it has to make sense.
That's true. I need a place to stay.
One, since we talk about, you used to refer back to some sort of memory, like I will also refer back to one. Like when I was in high school, I happened to be in one of the Risale-i Nur, and during the tea break, a guy came in Erzurum, like the tea always comes with lemon. He took a half lemon, started speaking about like the order in the lemon. Then I remember talking about galaxies, stars, like he started from the lemon and like ended up with like the whole universe. And I was like, I never went back there again. I was like, this guy is crazy. But like for him, like whatever he did, whatever the process that you are asking, he was through that process, and he was like a mid-aged guy. So I never heard anything like that's one of the like moments that kind of like stuck with me. Like I never forget that. But whatever he did, he was through that process, and he was like very sincere about how he approached just the lemon. To me, it was just a lemon, freaking lemon. So that was the memory. But like to simply answer your question, when I remember like seeing like leaves falling from the tree during like fall, especially like starting end of August, like September, would pain me the most. And I always like wanted to make sense of this life that I am forcefully like going through, but at the same time like I am in this like conflicting situations that is like very painful. So if to me like going through that experience, like for example for a tree to speak to you, or like a flower, looking at the beauty in the flower and knowing that like there is an end to it, it's gonna die. And if you don't feel like any kind of conflicting like feelings from that, I would care really less about like what's being discussed there. It would be completely irrelevant to my world. I wouldn't even listen to anyone. I wouldn't even listen to music. Like, and so the answer is like, if I think it takes some sort of internal reflection, first of all, about your own being here and how you are connected with all the rest of the creation. And through that like experience, if one doesn't, I feel like if one doesn't feel any kind of discomfort, why would you want to even bother yourself like trying to read it or looking for some sort of answer, because there is no question.
Can I say something?
I'm down, yeah.
There seem to be two different aspects that we've been talking about so far. One is, I think, the beginning of the part that you guys just read. It starts with, what words did you say?
There is no God but
God,
He,
there is no
and
God but
all
He.
beautiful names,
Okay.
most beautiful names. Yes.
So let's start with that one. And then the example that follows is talking about what? The earthquake and then the storm. The question here, I'll just ask this as a question and move on to the second aspect while you kind of think about it. Because the first time I heard this, tonight, the first thing that caught my attention was that why is he giving the example of a storm and an earthquake and tying this to the verse that all the beautiful names belong to him. I think you kind of either said it directly or alluded to it that it sounds kind of contradictory. Beautiful names and then storm idea do not seem to go together.
And also the other names that seemingly beautiful for us. Also, there's a contradiction.
So what is the connection here that verse is used as an evidence, or that example is used as an evidence for that verse? Although at the first look to us so far, at least, it seems kind of contradictory and it doesn't make sense. And the other part that you have talked about is looking at a plant or a tree and try to understand how it is saying something to us, talking to us. The example that I was thinking all along was the baby was just playing and now she's over there playing with something else. And what's her name? Zainab. Now, let's look at her and see what she's doing with the toys. Now the question here is, what is that toy saying to her?
Eat me.
Yes. That is the correct answer. Or what else? For example, she was playing with these things over here, or the other ones. What were those saying to her?
Chew on me.
Chew on me, eat me, shake me, play with me. These are all the things spoken to her, quote unquote. So those inanimate objects, let alone the tree, those inanimate objects were talking to her. Did I say that? It looks like it, because we see that there's a meaningful connection between those objects and her. And we cannot deny that. Now, if this is understandable enough or clear enough, this example, I don't want to keep talking about it unless it's not clear. But I think you got the idea. So an inanimate object, to repeat the same thing, an inanimate object is speaking to a baby who doesn't even know how to talk. That's another interesting thing. She doesn't know how to talk, but she's listening to something. And it is a meaningful relationship. What is this? And now if we have this example in our mind, using this example, let's go back to the beginning and try to understand why the author here is telling us, how come he's telling us that the earthquake and the storm is supposed to speak to us and say only the beautiful names belong to him. I think this is how we need to kind of formalize, put it into a formula and try to answer it. First, this is the base. And then using this example, I think the next question, I started with the easy one because I thought that this is going to be like a fundamental thing that we should spring from. That's why I talked about the first one and then immediately went to the other one. Now we can go back to the other one and try to understand how come the author is saying that those dreadful events are saying to us, speaking to us, those meanings in the verse. I think this is the question that we need to answer based on what we observe around us. So the question is, how come he's saying that?
How did he come to that conclusion?
Yes, how? Yeah, that's a good way to put it. How did he come to the conclusion? We know you immediately inferred that he came to that conclusion, right? That's a good start. We understand immediately. We understand that he must have done something in the background
through some sort of process.
Yeah, exactly. He must have some sort of process, mental process beforehand, but he's here giving us immediately the result that he came to. Now we are trying to understand his thought process. What is it? That's the, again, short and summary. Yes, that true, but how? The relationship between the storm and the Asma Husna.
What process does a baby go through there to listen to these things? I'm asking you.
Keep thinking.
She's just living, it seems like. She isn't going through a process, like a methodology. She's living.
Yes, true. What you're saying is true. She's using her own experience in her own world. She's interacting with the world around her, correct? Mm-hmm. And we know as an adult here observing her, as we talked about, the example, taking that as an example, we said, or it made sense to us that those objects were speaking to her. Yeah, this is understood. Yeah. Now, in the same way, we're going to interact. That was the reason, that was an example. Now, in the same way, we're going to interact, and we do actually, with everything around us. But in this case, it happens to be, as he gives the example, the interaction that he is thinking here is between him as a person and storm and the earthquakes. And now he's coming to the conclusion that those things, he says, are telling me that all the beautiful names belong to him.
Brothers, for 1 minute, please. Mohammed Said, please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you very much for all the comments and questions. I would like to pick up the last questions I think Mehmet Ali Abi asked. Using the example that Nursi is using here and trying to empathize with him and in front of a stormy sea or quaking earth, I feel like I would like to be protected and be secured at that moment, and make sense of this dangerous world that I am in. That a moment ago everything was functioning perfectly fine, smoothly. Now the earth underneath of my foot is quaking, and what is it that I can rely on? What is it that I can make sense of this event? How can I make sense of this event? And when I compare the smoothness of the earth versus quaking earth, I can conclude immediately that whatever the smoothness, wherever is it coming from, the quaking earth should be coming from the same direction or same place, and the earth and the smoothness of the earth or the quaking earth both tell me that the earth itself cannot be the source of its smoothness, or it cannot be the source of its quaking. And it opens a way for me to see this event, face this event as happening not by itself, but happening by the decision of something else, because it cannot be smooth by itself and it cannot quake by itself. It cannot be in order and functioning by itself, or it cannot change its position by itself. And I face this event as an action of someone who's doing it, not happening by itself. So my question now becomes, who can do this? Who can make it smooth, or what can make it smooth, or what can make it quake? And I think the conclusion that I can reach, which is offered to me by this verse, the option that tells me that the action that I observe in the universe, it might be a shape of something, shape of a tree, or shape of or color of anything, or a change that I observe, like smoothness of the earth and then quaking earth. They are happening because they are being done. They are not happening by itself, and the source of this happening, this event, cannot be located within the event itself, which means within the universe as an event. So I think the all glorious one, or as a name, or the quality, the event, and the qualities that I observe on this event, for example, shaking, gives me the data to reach the conclusion that this shaking is happening because of the maker, the will of the maker of the universe, which is my maker, which must be the same source, the source of my feelings that I need to be. I would like to be protected from this event, and I would like to make sense of this event, and I would like to find meaning. These are all needs that I find myself with, that show me again the same source should be giving me these qualities or these feelings. I just wanted to, put it there as what I have as an answer. I like the question again. Thank you.
You had a comment? Do you want to still make your comment?
I was just going to say, if it would be easier to answer your question, if we were looking at an earthquake, a cat, or a tree. But I guess you have proofs.
Okay, so what I understood from Mohammed Said's comment, right, that you speak, so he's saying that he looks at the smooth earth, which sometimes then quakes, and then the smooth earth, or the smoothness is gone, it crumbles, And then he says that this earthquake, or when this happens, the earth is speaking to him, saying that I am not the owner of the quality of smoothness. I am not the owner of even the qualities like quaking. I don't claim to own these things. And he's using, I guess, reasoning is the process he's going through. He's saying that it's speaking to me of this. And he says that it further speaks to me that the one that is in control of this is not even within the universe itself. It keeps speaking to him and speaks of like an absolute creator. That's what I understood from what he said, and then Brother Yusuf.
In the previous paragraph, there was sort of a warning. It was saying that it surely therefore necessitates not denying the other titles, acts, and degrees of dominicality when Almighty God is known through one of his names, titles, or degrees of dominicality. Indeed, it is harmful if a transition is not made from the manifestation of any one name to the others. For example, if the words of the names of all-powerful and creator are seen, and not the name of all-knowing, a person may fall into heedlessness and the misguidance of nature. So, because once you fall into the, let's say, misguidance of nature, and in practice there's no name for you actually. For it to be a name, it needs to be referring to something. I mean, in this context, to the absolute source. But let's say if I'm a naturalist, so I just say flower is beautiful. Like I am referring the beauty that I observe to the flower itself. So it's not a quote-unquote divine name in this case, but it is just a name or title of the flower itself. So, so in this sense, the author is saying that you will observe something, but as much as you tie them together, they will become names. So what I understand from here, if I only look at the earthquake, yeah, I will observe glory there, but is that glory beautiful for me? So I guess if I look at it in isolation, I mean, to be honest, I don't think I will ever be able to see it as beautiful if I look at it in isolation with the rest of the existence. But as much as I see, or to the extent that I make connections with the rest of the existence and the names that are being manifest in the rest of the existence, then I will start seeing it as beautiful. Because if you observe, let's say, a point in my life in which my mother was smacking me, and you do not see any other aspect of my life, just because 5 seconds video is shown to you, you might say that, well, this is a wild mother or wild woman, you know. But if you see before and after, because in this 5 seconds video, what you observe is violence. But if you see it within a certain context, then this behavior is going to start meaning something else. And this is what I am seeing in this text, at least, saying that by combining different manifestations, then it's going to start becoming beautiful names. Otherwise, most likely it will not.
So actually, I think we talked about this last week, but we were talking about the Greek gods, or we mentioned it. And if I just see a name and I don't see the other names within it, then I guess you could think maybe there's a Greek god of strength or war or love and all of these other things. And then because you don't combine, you see them as separate things, and then they start clashing with each other. And there's not tranquility and peace, and like everything starts clashing with each other when you're not able to see that even within, I guess, one name of power or like the storm, there's also the other names of beauty and other things there. It's all in harmony. And it won't be beautiful if you're not able to see that it's all in harmony.
Now, like after Martin pointed out, like 2 different names, especially the dreadful ones, let's say. I'm thinking which one is really more dreadful, like experiencing an earthquake or experiencing truly joyful and beautiful moment, knowing that it's not going to last. When I asked the question myself, I think that would be really the starting point, like, because like you experience something, like let's forget about the earthquake for a second. Like you experience something truly like enjoyable, but at the same time knowing that like it's passing by and it doesn't stay with you, it doesn't last, and that is the conflicting situation that we go through in every single moment. For example, like December 31st was very painful for me because a decade is over and I'm realizing that I am mid-age already. So from that experience, if I am not able to apply the La ilaha methodology and see the eternal aspect of the experience, none of the names is beautiful for me. They are all ugly. So what makes something like a quality beautiful for me is to understand the eternal aspect of it, or to be able to make the connection with the eternal aspect, or like with the eternal source. Because then I feel like I feel like complete, because there is always something inside, innate, that I am searching for. Once I connect myself with that eternal source, knowing that, okay, your existence is not only here, whatever the experiences are again, only then I feel complete. Otherwise, there's always something lacking in my life. And if I am not able to see that like aspect of the experiences, they are always ugly. Only the moments that I am able to make that connect, applying that La ilaha concept and knowing that, understanding the source of it, only then things becomes more meaningful or beautiful for me.
We have a comment from Suhail Dar, which I'll read. He says, quaking unveils the 70,000 veils. In other words, makes numerous names known, if I understood the question correctly. In quaking unveils the 70,000 veils, in other words, makes numerous names known. So not just power and will, but from a personal perspective, mercy and compassion, and so on and so forth. It is in these dramatic events the names become known. In other words, these awe-inspiring events are sort of crescendos of his creation. Would you like to comment further, Suhail?
I think, along what Suhail said, I think prior to the earthquake, I was living a life that I thought was stable, and then the earthquake reveals, in Suhail's words, unveils, that the life I thought that was stable is no longer stable, and it leads me to ask what is going on. It leads me to also ask, what is the meaning of this? It makes me realize that my life, I wasn't getting any meaning from my life. Why? Because I realized that I need existence. I realized I need security. And now, all of a sudden, I just realized that I didn't have security, right? And so, to the extent that the earthquake makes me realize the one that gives me security, then that is a beautiful event to me. Looking back at the state in which I was in a level surface, but unaware of the one that gives the security that I wasn't aware that I was in need of, I can say I am in better shape with this earthquake than prior to.
Are you in more security?
Yeah.
After the earthquake?
Yeah. if the earthquake spoke to me, obviously.
Yeah. I'm still trying to understand and thinking about the Motkin's question. You said that the toy was telling, eat me, to Zeynep, right? How can we know that? And we all agree about that, right? How can we do that? Because she tries to eat it, right? We come to that conclusion based upon our observation, because she's trying to eat it, then we assume that that toy tells her, eat me. So we come to that conclusion by observing her behavior, right? Her attitude against the toy. Okay. Then, by the way, I'm still having one more question. I'm gonna ask it. As I understand, this author, who is it, by the way? Who is it? Is it Turkey? Kurdish. Oh, nice. As I understand, this guy comes to conclusion by observing the human's reaction against those actions in the world, and come to conclusion that these actions tell human being, I'm not the source, depending on the behavior of human being. He is observing human being, and he is experiencing as a human being that, and come to conclusion. This is my question, by the way. I don't know, but if we can answer that connection, but the message I think he reads, these things tells him, I'm not the source. Then, this is the first part, by the way. The second part, I will connect both of them. Yusuf read this part, I think it's very interesting part. It says, it's harmful if a transition is not made from the manifestation of any one name to the others. Harmful. He would have said incomplete or immature, but he said harmful. It's not neutral, right? And you use the word connection. If you do not connect names to other names, it becomes harmful. But there's no subject of this sentence. Harmful to what? As I understand, I don't know whether it is shortcut or not, but it's harmful to Tawhid. Because, for example, he uses same keyword for each single sentence here. For example, he says, if the words of the names of all powerful and creator are seen and not the name of all known, a person may fall into heedlessness and misguidance of nature, then what should he have done? He should always keep in weave and recite. Always is our keyword here. He should always keep in weave and recite. He and his God. He continues. He should listen and hear from everything. Everything? Everything. But right? From everything. Say he's God the one. But he's always, because I think your point, Yusuf's point and Birkan's point were alluded to that angle. If you, as I understand, there's always a message. There's always a message, and human is always reacting to that message. But the problem is, actually, you mentioned that point. We are always reading, but the problem is we are reading in the name of what? I think that you used to give that kind of presentation in the past, am I right? I mean, we are always reading, Ikra. Ikra does not mean you need to read sometimes, but we are reading 99% of our lives in our life. Do you remember that kind of presentation? Maybe okay.
All times.
All
time.
Yeah. So, in summary, as I understand, he thinks that people are reading that I'm not that. I'm sorry. All of these actions are telling that I'm not the source. Then he connects that outcome to the verse, but I have no clear answer how come or how he reads that or how he concludes that this tells him I'm not the source, if I'm right. If it was clear.
You're not clear how the beings tell me that they are not the source.
Yeah. I think if we can solve it, if we can solve this, then it becomes what was the pumpkin? I know.
So
Let's
let's keep on topic, guys. So we have a comment that also talks about how an earthquake speaks. So while we're thinking of an answer to what you said, this might also be helpful in that. That Brother Rican will read, inshallah.
Why I'm reading? Because it's too long?
No, because you read it very well. By the way, the comment is from Hatice Beyza.
Okay, this is a comment from H. Beyza. The invocation of emotions in me in a specific experience, the invocation of emotions in me in a specific experience brings to my attention that I am always in need of security, and through my neediness or exchange I have with this earthquake. So I'm always in need of security, and through my neediness or exchange I have with this earthquake. For example, she says, I become aware that I am made to bear a relationship with it. I become aware that I am made to bear a relationship with it. That I don't exist in isolation by myself. And I cannot choose to disconnect myself from it. So I have a relationship with the earthquake, and the realization of this make me aware that I don't live in isolation. I cannot choose to disconnect myself from it. And so I am reminded I must be willed to have such a relationship by a conscious one. So the earthquake says to me, hey, you are in need of one who can make you feel secure and must fulfill this sense of security, because through your experience of me, you become aware of this need and the necessarily conscious construction of this relationship. You find yourself in with me. So you look at I'm trying to put words into your mouth, Hatice Beyza, so please interrupt me whenever you like. You have this feeling of insecurity. You are in the middle of the earthquake, and it reminds you that you need security. And through this realization of your need of security, you say, there must be one who gave me this feeling of or need for security, should also fulfill this need. She continues, the earthquake speaks to me about the names I already have a relationship with. Earthquake speaks to me about the names I already have a relationship with, whether or not I am conscious of initially. By drawing my attention to the fact that I am made to have such a relationship with it. That was a tiresome?
Exhaustive.
Exhaustive, yes. Comment.
That's a much better word. Yeah.
Alhamdulillah, thank you.
If someone wants to comment on what Hatice Beyza said, I would like to wait.
He's the moderator.
Moderator, do you want to?
It seems that no one has a comment.
Okay.
So.
Okay. So the earthquake example also reminded me a verse in the Quran that says, when they are in the sea, and then the waves like mountains come upon them, they make their deen, their religion sincere to Allah, saying, oh God, please protect us from this. And then the moment they set foot on the land, they go astray. Implying that, yeah, they became aware of their need for security, but then the moment they set foot on land, that went away. What happened? It suggests that the people who felt this security, they said, I am secure on land. Right? Versus what happens with the earthquake is the shattering of that perception, right? And so, well, now you're on land and you realize you're not secure there either, right? At the same time, the earth doesn't shake all the time, right? We know that. You know, I haven't felt an earthquake in my whole entire life. But as Hatice Beyza said, not Hatice, I should have said, you know, we go through other kinds of earthquakes. And so, but they're intermittent, that's not the norm. But there are these intermittent events that tell us, hey, you need security and you cannot, neither other things that you trust cannot give that to you. So in a sense, this is speech telling you, hey, seek your security with the one who can fulfill it for you in all its aspects. Because when we say security, it's not just maintaining my existence as an animate object. I have all kinds of needs, and I want all of those needs to be secured, right? So I think the shattering of ungrounded beliefs is the main speech here that is communicated to us.
So we have a comment from Suhail Dar. He says, the very fact things are quaking, in parentheses he says changing, so the very fact things are quaking is them telling me that they cannot sustain their existence. For to be a sustainer, one must possess and be an undying source of their qualities. And in that change, do his absolute names become known? That is the miraculousness of existence, that in quaking change. So, could you actually read this? Because I'm having trouble.
What I was just saying is that to answer the, I think somebody was asking a question a little earlier about how do I know what the things are telling me? Just to tie it into this section, is the fact that an earthquake, for example, it's a dramatic event, so it's signifying some sort of change. And in that, as Zafar and others were saying, it sort of wakes you up from that heedlessness, because in that quake, you realize things, they're telling you that they can't sustain or maintain their existence. Because if you were to be able to sustain your existence for even a moment, you would be an undying source of your own qualities. In other words, you would be absolute. But it's in that sort of change, especially with changes that are so dramatic, an earthquake, a hurricane or tornado, anything of that sort, like an ocean surge or a tsunami, then it wakes you up to the fact that, oh, the qualities that I take for granted, as Muhammad was earlier saying, you know, order, or no, I shouldn't say, I guess maybe calm versus what we call quote unquote chaos, or there's not really any chaos, but I guess things that are outside the norm, like an earthquake. Like the qualities don't belong to the things themselves, but they belong to an absolute one, and those events make those names known. That's what those events are telling me. That's how they're speaking to me, not by like words per se, but in what they mean. And I guess what I was saying is that sort of the miraculous nature of existence is that the fact that in change, or let's say in the case of an earthquake, in its quaking, do his undying perfections become known? And in that regard, as I was saying, change is the only constant, as they say in the universe, because he must be that constant, or absolute, in other words. That's the only way there can be change. There must be a absolute source behind it. And it's in these sort of they're sporadic, they're very rare. But those are the events we remember, as Osman was initially alluding to, like being like that sticks with you for your whole life. Even if it sort of fades, you may forget what happens today, but you don't forget those sort of dramatic events because you're not used to them. And without even, reflecting on those few moments you had in your life, you would be in sort of heedlessness, as Khadija Bezos was saying about the interconnectedness of all the names, and as Nursi was saying. And I was in a post another thing about a verse. Let me just, where it's a famous verse, chapter 17. There's not a thing except it glorifies by or with his praise. وَإِن مِّن شَيْءٍ إِلَّا يُسَبِّحُ بِحَمْدِهِ. And everything in its own way is glorifying him, or in other words, making him known, from my perspective, at least to me, because that's what makes it relevant. It's nice that the universe is, could be glorifying him or glorifying its maker, but its relevance to me is they're speaking to me when they're making that glorification. Like it's for me to know. It's not just for them, but there's something there for me to make use of, to interpret or understand. And with his praise, in other words, making known his qualities, his praiseworthy names. So an earthquake glorifies, in other words, makes known or attributes the praiseworthy quality, and something is only praiseworthy if it's, in this regard, the perfection of his names, like power or will or wisdom or mercy or compassion. They make them known. And if you think about it, at least from as Nursi puts it in the end, that you seek only through him, through his names, through the name of God, through the name of mercy, through the name of compassion. If you think about it, even your seeking, as Nursi said in other parts of his writing, your glorification and seeking of him is only on account of and belonging to him. In other words, you can't even take credit or ownership of something of your glorification, because even that's given to you. And so you can't seek anyone except him. Even in the most sort of frightening of situations in an earthquake, as Osmo was pointing out, you realize there's nothing except him at that point. There's no one else to beseech save him.
So we're almost out of time, but would you like to make a final comment about your question, or are you okay?
You feel that I what to say something.
I feel like you want to say something.
No, I was still thinking. But I have one point to share, maybe. I think the interaction between the human being and material or events are not continuous. They all have limitations. That's why we are maybe that says something. As you see, at time point 1, I have an interaction with the X, but at time t2, I don't have an interaction. Maybe I don't want to have an interaction with it. So when we are observing that scene, as we observe Zeynep, we say that that event or that interaction type tells him, you want something from me, but I'm not the source of it. Then he cuts or she cuts the break it, and right now there's no connection with her and the thing. But I don't know. Makbul, you have asked a question, as I remember, man.
You guys have all answered.
You have just questioned. You have
So
answered.
you're fully satisfied with the answers?
If you are.
I might want to add really small. The event doesn't need to be dramatic as an earthquake, I feel. Any perfection, anything that I feel attached to, I desire. The setting of that thing, meaning the setting of the ending of the experience, and I cannot preserve it. I want it, I cannot preserve it. That is the point in which the beautiful names can arise for me when I embrace it, I read, I open myself to it, I open myself to the message it brings to me, right? So anything I desire, anything that's desires to me, the fact that it cannot maintain itself, or I cannot maintain the relationship, it's ending, right?
If it wasn't as such, you wouldn't be looking for any further like meaning or like whatever at all.
Right. The author says somewhere else, that is the point at which the beautiful names rise.
Could we say it only speaks if it changes? It needs to change for me to be able to.
Say that again?
It only speaks if it changes.
It has to change. Yeah.
It has to change.
Yeah.
I have one more contribution.
Before I will read a quick comment and then.
Okay, go ahead.
Suhail says, and lastly, as Nursi points out, you seek of the name you are in need of. You seek the name you are in need of. The more you are aware of the names that manifest upon your existence, the more of a true human being you become. That is the Jevshan he is referring to. As Yusuf points out, the beauty of man is connected to seeing the beauty of his interdependent and interconnected names.
Yeah. Okay. Why I'm still insisting on the message of I'm not the source, because if I can reach the message like I'm not the source, then the following question is, then what is this? Because there is something which exists in front of me right now. If you are not the source, what's that? Then it starts telling me, he is glorious.
Right.
Okay, like I'm seeing the beauty, it says I'm not the source, then I'm responding again, then what is that?
What are you saying? As Nursi says,
yes,
what are you saying?
Then what are you saying? He is the source. I think that's why I'm insisting on the because I think that, as you know, Probably Abdullah will start saying Subhaneke la ilme lana illa ma 'allamtana inneke entel alimul hakim in a minute right now. Same logic, right? Subhaneke la ilme lana, there's no ilm illa ma 'allamtana. Come on, man. What are you trying to me? Are there any ilm or not? Huh? There is no ilm, but you how will you translate that, by the way?
Other than what you taught us.
Other than what you taught us. Man, please be honest. Is there an ilm or not? Right? You see my point? Yeah.
I think that's a perfect place to end then. If someone has a last comment. No, okay then. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم وآخر دعواهم أن الحمد لله رب العالمين. الفاتحة.